Hey everybody, what's up? Just Aaron right here, Canadian Looney. Hope you had a wonderful long weekend. Enjoyed your Thanksgiving break. Guess who else is still on break? All the MPs. There is no question period this week. We have videos here to back that up. We've got a couple of fun ones that we're going to watch here. Before, we've got a crazy committee video to get into. We've got this, it is a pretty wild committee video, guys. It's worth checking out. I try not to misrepresent the material. I did catch a bit of it. It's got Hedy Fry. Whenever she is involved, her just lunacy takes over. She's the chair of this committee. Anyhow, we're going to get into a couple of videos. We'll get to saying hello to everybody here in a couple of minutes. Good to see everybody. And yeah, let's kick this thing off. Let's go.
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here?
Oh, yeah.
It's time for a change in this country, my friends. A real change.
Squiggle and squirm as you might, it is really hard to put lipstick on a pig.
When I'm Prime Minister, I will keep my promises. WTF.
Here.
I know this place is where I am. No other place is better than. No matter where I go, I am proud to be Canadian. I am, you know I am. The worst that works.
The one we call Canadian.
Gentlemen, beam me aboard.
Not only did I read the report, I actually paid some attention when I dressed myself this morning, unlike that scene over there.
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Oh, yeah.
Hey gang, what's up? Just Aaron right here, Canadian Looney. We watch the question period daily. We do a live stream of that broadcast. We've got an amazing community, a very fun chat room. Come and check it out. These are some clips from what we've been watching on there. These head-to-head battles on the House of Commons floor are ridiculous. No answers, it wouldn't seem ever, but they do generate a lot of questions. For you, the Canadian thinker, like wondering what to do when you go to the ballot box. If you watch these videos here, you're going to figure out what decision you want to make. I assure you that. My name's Aaron, Canadian Looney. Like, subscribe, share, get notified, all those fun things. Come and join us for one of the live shows. Let's check out this video, some bonkers head-to-head stuff from the House of Commons floor. Let's take a look.
Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I have tremendous respect for the member from Vancouver Kingsway, whom I have known for many years and with whom I have worked constructively for many years. I share his concern about income inequality, and that's why I know that he shares my happiness at the jobs numbers that we got this morning. The fact that we have 47,000 more jobs added to the Canadian economy in September, the fact that wages have outpaced inflation for 20 months in a row, and as an added bonus, rents have been going down in Vancouver.
Member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Island and Rideau Lakes.
Parliament's budget watchdog has confirmed yet again that Canadians pay more in carbon tax than they get back in so-called rebates. In Ontario, for example, a family will pay $1,400 more than they get back. But they already knew that because everything costs more after 9 years of these NDP Liberals. Taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up for their economic vandalism that they're perpetrating on Canadians. So why won't this Prime Minister just put Canadians in the place where they need to be with a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, he didn't read the report. It's obvious, because on page 1 of the report, it says right here that Canadians will see a net gain, receiving more from the Canada carbon rebate than the total amount they pay in the federal fuel charge. Mr. Speaker, just flip to page 7. It's a bit long. I know the Member of Parliament might have a bit of a difficult time with a document like this, but the meaningless slogans don't matter. What does matter is that, broadly speaking, our updated estimates show larger net gains for average households right across income quintiles in backstop provinces compared to the previous distributional analysis. If he's going to quote the book, Mr. Speaker, he ought to read it. It's right here. I can bring it over if you'd like. Page 1.
Just going to ensure that we, of course, treat all members with the respect and dignity that all members deserve. The Honourable Member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Well, Speaker, not only did I read the report, I actually paid some attention when I dressed myself this morning, unlike that scene over there.
It's so funny. And the Liberals overreact so much.
Knows that order.
Look at the outfit that guy's wearing.
Honourable Member from Milton will take a seat. Colleagues, I've mentioned this before in question period that it's inappropriate to comment on the looks of any member, and so I do point that out. So I'll invite the Honourable Member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes to start his question again without the comments which the Speaker has risen to his feet for.
Speaker, not only did I read the report, I was able to make it past the first page, all the way to page 19 of the PBO's report that shows the true cost of the carbon tax for Ontario families, that it's going to be $1,400 more than they're getting back in their phony rebates. And Statistics Canada today revealed the full effect of the economic vandalism. All of these high taxes and economic wealth redistribution were supposed to make Canadians better off, they claimed, but instead we've seen the largest gap between the rich and poor that's ever existed in this country. It's time for a carbon tax election. Why won't they just give us one?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I know that this is Friday, and I know that Conservatives just cannot resist every day seeking to plumb new depths of degraded nursery playground insults. But I have some advice for the member opposite. If he wants to insult a colleague for his appearance, never a good idea, maybe don't pick a gold medal winning Olympic athlete.
Order.
Order.
Order. The Honourable Member from Calgary, Rocky Ridge.
Well, Mr. Speaker, after 9 years, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time's up. This week, the Parliamentary Budget Officer once again reported that the carbon tax costs more per family than families get back in rebates. In Alberta, the carbon tax will cost nearly $2,000 by driving up the cost of gas, home heating and groceries, and nearly everything else. All 10 provinces don't like it, and Canadians don't like it. So when will the government call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know how you can tell that the Conservatives know they're losing the argument? Is when they result to useless meaningless ad hominem attacks on people's appearance. That is unnecessary, unparliamentary, and childish. It's childish just like their slogans, Mr. Speaker. They don't want to cheer on Canada's economy. They don't want to acknowledge that 47,000 jobs were added in September. They don't want to acknowledge that interest rates are down because inflation is down, and gas prices are down, and unemployment is down. And Mr. Speaker, the best part is our emissions are down too, because our plan is working. Canadians are working hard, and our economy is working for them.
The honourable member from Calgary, Rocky Ridge.
Mr. Speaker, I asked him a polite question and he didn't answer it, so I'm not sure what that response was about. I'll ask again and point out, though, that the PBO report couldn't have been more clear. It's right there on page 19 and page 3. That's where the PBO says that Canadians pay more in the carbon tax and GST on the carbon tax than they get in rebates. The carbon tax drives up the cost of gas, heating, and groceries. It kills jobs. It suppresses wages by chasing investment out of Canada. But he doesn't have to agree with me, Mr. Speaker. His government can call a carbon tax election, and we'll see what Canadians have to say. When will they do it?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, the carbon price is this simple. It brings down pollution and it puts more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadians. It is the single best mechanism known to the market to reduce carbon footprints. In fact, it was a conservative invention, but their opposition to it is unsurprising. What is surprising is the complete flip-flop on this position that we've seen from the NDP. When you flip on your principles and abandon supporting carbon pricing, you breed voter cynicism and you send one message to progressive voters. That is that if you want somebody to defend climate action and support attacking pollution, your only option is the Liberal Party of Canada.
Everyone has an opinion about All right, gang, we're going to jump over to saying hello to some people. Feels like we've got a busy room. Two Flips, my brother, what is shaking? Good to see you. Bo Caddy, what is going on? Brenda Weeby, yeah, they're not sitting this week, so we've got fillers. Like, I've got this crazy committee video that we're going to watch in a moment. Canada RV, always a pleasure. Chris Guy the Fly Guy, what's going on? Clint's Dinosaur Egg, welcome. Good to see you. Cryptomeria, always a pleasure to have you in the chat room. Donna Logan, good to see you today. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Harry Taint, always a pleasure. Jeff M, welcome to the chat. Joe Sofat, you so fat. Kenzie Kraken, what's going on, sister? Captain Kirk, beam me up. We do have a great show today. M Hobbs, 22, what's going on, bro? Mark Linkstad, what is shaking? Welcome. Mike Malash, always great to see you here, man. You're always the first guy in the chat. It's awesome. Rita D'Alessandro, what's going on, sister? Savage Silence, always a pleasure. Cheryl 01, what is going on? Hope you're having a good day. True Blue 104, what is shaking? I'm sure that there's a bunch of people that I missed that don't pop into this list. What am I going to do? Joe Snake, what's going on? How are things in Prince Edward Island? Yeah, so it doesn't want me to be able to go back through my list. We're just going to move on to the next video. Here we go.
Conservatives would have liked to be working today to counter the doubling of housing costs this Prime Minister has caused, or the record food price inflation, which has been 36% higher in Canada than in the US. But unfortunately, the Prime Minister has paralyzed Parliament by refusing your ruling directing his government to turn over evidence in the $400 million green slush fund scandal that the Auditor General says involves 186 conflicts of interest, with the chair of the fund found guilty. What has he got to hide?
Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition is not being truthful with Canadians. It is the RCMP commissioner himself who said the RCMP's ability to receive and use information obtained through this production order and under the compulsory powers afforded by the Auditor General Act in the course of a criminal investigation could give rise to concerns under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It is therefore highly unlikely that any information obtained by the RCMP under the motion where privacy interests exist could be used to support a criminal prosecution or further a criminal investigation.
This is a $400 million scandal involving Liberal appointees giving millions of dollars to their own companies, and the minister's story is now changing.
Yep.
Last week, she claimed that the government had given documents to the RCMP. This week, they claim that if they gave documents to the RCMP, it would cause the Charter of Rights to come crashing down. It sounds like there's a new story every week to justify paralyzing Parliament to cover up the truth. What is in these documents about this $400 million scandal that the Prime Minister is so afraid of?
This is a typical witch hunt from the leader of the opposition to go after people who have nothing to do with this. These are files such as personnel files that contain private information of individuals who have nothing to do with what is going on. Mr. Speaker, it is the RCMP and the Auditor General themselves who raised concerns with this motion, and it is the government's view that we should send this to committee so that we can get on with the important work of this House and protect the rights of Canadians.
A witch hunt? The Ethics Commissioner appointed by this government has found the chair of the fund in violation of the law. The Auditor General, also appointed by this government, says there were 186 conflicts of interest involving Liberal appointees giving millions of dollars to their own companies. $400 million. Potential criminality, according to the main whistleblower in the scandal. Any other employer would voluntarily turn over all the evidence to the police if it had been ripped off by its own staff. What is the Prime Minister hiding?
All right, so we've got a moment here, then we're going to jump into our the committee meeting. That this one is pretty entertaining to watch, guys. A few new people jumped in the room. I'd like to say hello to Christine Noseworthy. I think I missed you earlier, Scott Campbell. How did that happen? Yeah, Mark Snow, welcome. Gus Pappas, what's going on, brother? Anybody else that we may have missed? We missed Jim Bellingham. What is up, Jim? How are you doing, brother? Yeah, anyway, we're going to pop into this committee meeting because it is friggin' entertaining. Watch this HEDY fry. She's out of her mind. Like, she's older than Yoda and not quite as sharp as Yoda was in Empire Strikes Back. Not even close. Anyway, and she has this arrogance about her. It's weird.
One of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage. Before we begin, I would like to do some little housekeeping and tell you, don't forget the decals in front of you to put any of your devices on so we don't...
What's up, Rock Girl? How are you today?
Don't forget to, you are not allowed to take photographs of what's going on here. Don't forget that you can get them afterwards off the website. Don't forget that when you speak, you should address everything through the chair. Once again, don't forget that that I think that's it. That's all the housekeeping I have for you guys. Yes, Kevin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm just wondering, a point of order, that I do see the Deputy Minister is here for the first hour. Is there any chance she could stay for the second hour?
Well, you heard the question, Madam Ondu.
I will make myself available.
Okay. There you go.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Very good. Thank you. I wanted to welcome Minister. Welcome. And thank you for taking the time to come and replying so promptly to our requests. So now, we're going to begin with the study, which is Canada's anti-racism strategy, pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Thursday, May the 30th, 2024. The committee will begin its study of Canada's anti-racism strategy. So I think that you know the usual drill. We have the names of people who are going to ask questions of the minister. The minister is here for the first hour, and accompanying her will be, obviously, the Department of Canadian Heritage, Isabelle Mondoux, Deputy Minister, Gavin Cadotte, Assistant Deputy Minister, and combating hate, we're going to have Gavin Cadotte also is going to be the Assistant Deputy Minister who is going to speak to this issue. So, again, Minister, you have 5 minutes for your opening remarks, and then we will, of course, open to questions and answers. I will give you a 30-second call. I will just go 30 seconds so you can wrap up if possible, and then we will begin the question and answer period. So welcome, and begin, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues, committee members. Thank you for inviting me to speak today. As you indicated, Madam Chair, I'm joined by my wonderful officials who have also said that they'll be able to stay here later, so thank you. Now, Madam Speaker, when we got elected back in 2015, we started a very important conversation in this country about systemic racism and how we can address the impact that discrimination has on Canadians. We know that 2 in 5 Canadians say that they face discrimination in Canada, and these proportions rise to 50% among Indigenous people and 78% among racialized people. Now, we also know that rise in hate incidents disproportionately affect Indigenous people, Black and racialized people. And at the same time, Jewish and Muslim Canadians are also disproportionately being impacted by the rise in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. Whether it is online or in our streets, hateful words and actions have a devastating impact on our communities and our country. Whether it is places of worship being attacked, communities being divided, or even losing loved ones, we have seen firsthand what hate and racism can do. And when we look at the pain and damage that hate causes, one thing is clear. We cannot allow hate to go unchecked. The cost of inaction is far too great. And as a government, we have been very clear from the very beginning, hate, racism, and discrimination have absolutely no place in Canada. Madam Chair, we can all agree that every single person in Canada has a right to feel safe, regardless of where they're from, who they love, and how they pray. To that end, in the last 6 months, our government has introduced 2 historic measures to address the critical situation our country is facing. In June, we announced Canada's new anti-racism strategy, which is investing over $110 million to fight racism and discrimination, of which $70 million is being invested directly into communities to promote equity and to ensure communities have the resources they need to fight racism and discrimination, and to also break down systemic barriers that face racialized Canadians. Additionally, just 2 weeks ago, we launched Canada's first ever action plan on combating hate. The plan represents an additional $273 million commitment from our government that is going to support 20 different initiatives that will empower communities identify and respond to hate, that is going to support victims and protect survivors, and that is going to build community trust and improve the institutional readiness within our institutions. Combined, these 2 plans represent a whole-of-government approach that is fundamentally about security and unity. This is about being proactive, this is about safety, and it is about building trust. Just to give an example of the kind of work that we're talking about, earlier this year I was in Halifax, and there I announced the funding of $800,000 for an organization, Amutep Academy, which aims to improve BIPOC representation in STEM by providing after-school tutoring and mentorship for BIPOC youth in Halifax. Madam Chair, I had an opportunity to meet a young man named Joshua, who, because of the mentorship that he received, he's now going to be able to study engineering at Dalhousie University. And he's not the only one. Thanks to the program that we as a government have been funding, working alongside community groups, there are 10 times the number of BIPOC students in STEM at Dalhousie University because of this program. Now, this is just one of the hundreds of different projects that we have been supporting across this country. And let me tell you, they're not just transforming lives, they're transforming and changing communities. As a government, we're stepping up and doing what any responsible government would do, support communities on the ground and continue to fight to keep Canadians safe. But it is also important to remember that there's only one way to combat hate and racism. That is to do it together. That is to do with allies and partners on the ground. It's incumbent upon all of us, Madam Chair, to stand up against hate, racism, and to build a Canada where everyone feels safe. And to reflect on that when we work together, we actually bring people together along. And it's not just the right thing to do, Madam Speaker, it's a Canadian thing to do. That is the vision of Canada that our government is working to build, and I'm happy to take any questions from my colleagues. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Now we will begin the question and answer period. The first session is going to be a 6-minute round, and we're going to begin with the Conservatives, JAMIL JIVANI. Mr. JIVANI, 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Minister said that, just in her opening remarks, that we cannot allow hate to go unchecked. So I'd like to ask the Minister, do you join me in unequivocally condemning the Sammy Doon protests on October 7th in Vancouver, where there were chants of death to Canada, death to America, death to Israel, and even burning of the Canadian flag? Do you unequivocally condemn that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I absolutely condemn such acts of anti-Semitism and acts of hate that we have seen across this country. They need to stop. Full stop. That needs to stop. Madam Speaker, we condemn them in the strongest terms possible. We're working really closely with our colleagues at Public Safety. The local jurisdictions are very much engaged on this issue. And as I mentioned, we have been very proactive at the work that we have been doing. As I mentioned, Madam Chair, through you, we have put forward Canada's first ever action plan on combating hate. This came out of the work that we have been doing with community members, working along stakeholders. This came out of the 2 summits that our government held, whether it was combating anti-Semitism or combating Islamophobia. This came out of the work that my colleague, Minister Ian, has been doing for the action plan for the 2 LGBTQ community. The $275 million that we're putting forward, it's to support communities on the ground, to prevent hate. We're enhancing the Canada Security Program that actually helps communities on the ground to provide support.
Can I ask the Minister, we have seen a sharp rise in hate crimes, various types, over the last 9 years. Some statistics measured at a 251% increase. Why isn't your anti-racism strategy reducing hate crimes as opposed to being inexistent while hate crimes are getting worse?
Madam Chair, I think it's important to recognize that as a government, we have been very deliberate about making a choice to be inclusive. We have been very deliberate about supporting communities, reducing systemic barriers on the ground, by supporting communities on the ground, by making sure with the plan that we have put forward, this is a whole of government approach because we know there's no one single solution to combating hate. We need to work with partners on the ground, whether it is by making sure communities have the supports that they need, but at the same time working alongside StatsCan to make sure we're collecting disaggregated data. Also at the same time ensuring that our institutional readiness is available for our police forces. That's the work that's happening on the ground, the supports for victims and survivors. This is a whole of government approach that we have put forward to support Canadians. And I think it's important to also recognize it's been an extremely difficult time for many Canadians. And as Canadians, we have a responsibility to work alongside communities, to bring people together, to really hone in on the values that I know we're also proud as Canadians of unity, of compassion, and to make sure we're supporting communities on the ground.
Thank you, Minister. So the government's anti-racism strategy claims to make our communities, and I quote from the website, more prosperous. Since 2020, there's been a 134% increase in food bank usage in Ontario. Has your anti-racism strategy failed to make Canadians more prosperous?
Madam Chair, through you, I think it's important to recognize the fact that when we got elected back in 2015, we made a very deliberate choice to be inclusive. I fundamentally believe, and I've said this many times, diversity is a fact in Canada. It exists. But inclusion is a choice. And as a government, as liberal members of this House, we have been very deliberate about making that choice to be inclusive because we know when you remove systemic barriers for Canadians, we all win. We know when you support communities on the ground, ground and empower them. You know, the example that I gave of a young man in Halifax that I met, Joshua, you know, because of the work that's happening on the ground that is enabling and removing barriers, getting people, you know, to get access to the supports that we are providing them, it's the reason why we're seeing amazing results in terms of economic empowerment of Canadians, and we're going to continue to do this work.
Could I ask a clarifying question? So is your strategy to make the food bank lines more diverse and inclusive, or how exactly is the country more prosperous?
I reject the premise of that question, Madam Chair. As I mentioned in my remarks earlier, Canada's anti-racism strategy is to ensure that every single person, regardless of how they look, regardless of how they pray, regardless of who they love, that they have equal opportunities to contribute to the Canadian society and to be able to do it in a successful way so that they can continue to grow. That is a responsible way that we include people. I will always say, when we include people, whether it is in our government, the diversity that exists, whether it is in businesses, whether it is in our institutions, we all win, because that's the beauty of Canada, and those are the values that I know that we all agree makes us who we are as Canadians.
I'm not sure the Canadians lining up in food banks would think they're winning as part of the government strategy, but to move on, do you believe that part of your responsibility would be to remove some of the economic challenges facing Canadians of all races and backgrounds, perhaps even advocating for an end to the carbon tax, which is driving up the cost of living?
Madam Chair, I want to give one example. Because of the work that we have been doing, I'll give you an example of the Black Entrepreneurship Program. Because of that is yielding has supported more than 16,000 businesses, Black entrepreneurs across this country to be able to get into markets that they have never been able to get into before, because of the work that we're putting in to support communities on the ground.
Thank you. And now I go to the Liberals for 6 minutes. Michael Coteau, Mr. Coteau, 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Minister, for being here, and thank you to your team. I know that the work you've been doing is, there's no blueprint really for it from a Canadian perspective, a pan-Canadian perspective. It's the first time a government has put forward a plan like this nationally to tackle something that's not new. You know, you know that I worked on an anti-racism plan for Ontario, and we noticed from about 2012, like even the national numbers were increasing from that time period. There was a trajectory shift at that point in 2012. And we've seen a constant rise in hate crimes. And, you know, we always tried to figure out, was it because we weren't collecting them properly? You know, there was no standardization in how, reports came in. I know the RCMP has changed some of its methods of collecting that type of data, but it is tough work because there is no blueprint and it is new work. So thank you for the work you're doing, to you and your department. I've always looked at racism as not only a moral imperative, but there's an economic side of it. And you started talking a little bit about it. There's a cost to standing still, a cost to not doing anything. And as Canadians, we need to look for ways to remove barriers so we unleash the power of our people. And I think that's that's one piece of why we're trying to tackle racism. So can you take a minute to just talk about some of the economic pieces within the plan that may target the Indigenous community, Black community, just Canadians as a whole? Because it may target, for example, the Black community, but the benefits are for Canadians. You know, we all benefit when the next door neighbor is doing well, you're doing well, right? So can you talk a little bit about the economic, aspirations of this plan, and maybe talk about some of the success stories within the past work that's connected to this current plan?
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Mr. Coteau, and you and I have chatted many times offline, and I want to thank you for your leadership, particularly, as we were building on the work that I know we have been leading, but particularly your leadership on the work as the previous chair of the Black Caucus in our government to be able to lead this work. I want to talk about particularly on how this stems, because, as I was talking about, diversity exists in Canada, I think we all know, but, making sure that we're including people into our economy, including people into our structures, it actually benefits all Canadians. And particularly when you talk about the supports for Black Canadians, you would remember in 2017 when Canada officially adopted the UN Decade for the People of African Descent. Unfortunately, we adopted it late because the previous Conservative government didn't think that it was relevant to the community. What that roadmap, what that UN Decade of People of African Descent, when we adopted that as a Canadian government, what that led us to do is actually have a roadmap. The roadmap for how do we actually remove those systemic barriers for Black Canadians in this country. That led us to have an anti-racism secretariat within internally the federal government to look at different ways of how we address systemic racism within our institution. That led us to have, tangible investments into Black communities that weren't just, handouts to, as some members would like to say from the Conservative Party. It was actually doing the work and the partnership work within the community. I talk about the Supporting Black Communities initiative. This is a Black-led, Black-serving, program that is working alongside 4 national funders to be able to give grassroots organizations on the ground the supports that they need to build capacity. You and I would remember when the conversations we've had with so many different stakeholders from the community that they said we just need to build capacity so we can help the people, because at the grassroots is where people know best and they have the best solutions, but sometimes they need a little bit of support. That has been a wonderful way how we have been leading this work alongside Black communities. The other things, I want to go back to the Black Entrepreneurship Program, because the success story of that program is incredible. 16,000 businesses are now been able to go through this program. It wasn't just, getting, get a little bit of access to capital, get some loans, but it was also about mentorship and about partnerships. I met a lady in Montreal, a single mom, who had started her business in Montreal, where she was. It's a pickle business that she started from her home. But because of this program and the knowledge hub that this program has, they were able to actually. She has her product in almost every grocery store in Canada. So she's a success story in terms of the work that's been happening because of the mentorship, because of the work, and to your point earlier around, it's not just for our own benefit. It's about creating good, well-paying jobs, for the community at large. But this is how you actively work with communities. And I think we all know when you include people, we all win. And that's fundamentally the way that we have been working along, and we're going to continue to do this work together. Thank you.
Remember when we established the anti-racism strategy in Ontario in 2016, the consultations we did the year before, they were pretty tough. And I'm sure you have a lot of conversations with a lot of people across the country. What are those conversations like today?
Well, I think we all recognize it's been a difficult time, right? But particularly as we know and as we navigate the challenging times, particularly with communities across this country, the conversation that I have with the Jewish community members, the rise in anti-Semitism that we have seen across this country, it is troubling. The rise in Islamophobia that we have seen across this country is troubling. And we need to make sure that we're supporting communities on the ground. That's the work we're leading across government. That's why we've been working, putting forward strategies, but also with tangible investments in them. And not just saying that this is not just one department leading this work. This is a whole of government approach. Talk about the Canada Action Plan on Combating Hate. It is 20 different, departments that are engaged on the work that's been that were 20 different initiatives with 7 different departments, from public safety to criminal justice system, to making sure that, with StatsCan, which plays a really big role in getting this aggregated data so we can get the right type of data. The fact that we're working with, law enforcement agencies, so communities know best how to report this data so we can have that data. So this is the work that we have been doing with the communities, and we're going to continue to do it.
Thank you. We've gone a little over time there, Michael. I'm going to go to Martin Champoux. Martin, Mr. Champoux, 6 minutes, please.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was paying attention to what the Minister was saying about this entrepreneur woman from Montreal who started a business, a pickle business, and I would appreciate, we can, I guess, all appreciate the success obtained by this individual, but they might be for some other time the minister comes to see us. But on a more serious note, thank you for coming today. And it's very important for us to get to talk to you. And it's on current news what's happening. Our Conservative colleague was referring to this protest earlier this week on October 7th, of course, a significant date. And the slogans that were used during this protest made headlines.
So we're going to turn down the audio on those guys for a while. Not always interested in listening to the block. Two Flips, what's up? Bob Boom, Brenda Walworth, good to see you. Brian 8066, Canada RV, Chris Murray, Cryptomeria, Europa Empiro Roma, how you doing? James Fahey, good to see you, brother. Joe Sofat, Jose DeMello, what is up? Welcome back. KDS, good to see you. Kenzie Kraken, Captain Kirk, Mad Scientist Lab, Mark Maloney, Mary Lepp, Mr. G, Rayman, Savage Silence, Scott Campbell, Stinger 07, 007, Tommy Gunn, True Blue, and Wolfhound. What's going on, gang? Sorry if I missed anybody like Donna Logan. I don't think I saw you on this list. No, I saw you in the chat.
Proposed by my party, which is asking the removal of the exemption from the criminal code, the religious exemption. So it refers to a section of the criminal law that allows a person to make such remarks if it is.
What's up, Dimebag Coins? How are you doing? King Cobra, what's up? Donna Logan, what's going on?
Some sort of a consensus between the political parties in the House.
Yeah, again, sorry guys, like I have a list of participants that I go to. And if you're not active in the chat, or if you leave the channel and you come back and you haven't been in the chat, I don't think it shows. And so that's how I miss you. I try to catch everybody. I do try really hard at that.
Allah take care of these aggressors of the Israeli state and exterminate them all and don't leave any one of them behind. So these individuals could say that they can say such things because it fits within their religious beliefs. In Quebec, in Canada, they can do this. And now you have your combating hate action plan, but we're not really seeing much evidence of this intention to remove this religious exemption from criminal code. So I'd like to hear you on that.
And thank you. Very important question. Look, the rise in hate absolutely needs to stop. And I think we all agree that it needs to stop. Two things I want to mention. I think first and foremost that in Canada, we have a Charter of Right and Freedom that actually protects people, that we have a right to peaceful protest. But it should not and it must not cross the line into hate and intimidation. I think we all agree with that. I think that's fundamental to who we are as Canadians. And to your point around the piece around hate speech, we have our online harms legislation, which I'm sure this committee knows full well, and that actually tackles some of the spread of hateful speech online as well as in the real world that we know it starts online and it trickles into our communities. This is something tangible, and I know my colleague Minister JIVANI is very much in touch with Bloc and others to be able to move forward on this. But I think we all fundamentally believe that it has, and I think I want to go back to one thing particularly. I think it has been a very difficult time for so many communities, and we need to make sure and I think acknowledge the grief and pain and the anxiety and the fear that the communities are feeling. I also need to make sure that we all also understand that I want to reiterate once again that we have, people have a right to peaceful protest.
Oui, mais là, je vous arrête, Madame la Ministre. Je vous arrête parce que là, vous l'avez.
I'll interrupt you on that point, Minister, because you said that twice. You said that, and you are completely right. People absolutely have the right to protest in a peaceful manner. And even though sometimes it can get heated in peaceful protests, there's a limit to what can be accepted. Yeah, I mean, there was some heat, but it didn't turn into violence. But we heard calls to violence, calls to the death of a certain population, and violent calls, the likes of which we haven't seen before. And we have the tools available to us, but we're not really seeing any action. We're not seeing these these people arrested by police, brought before justice for having held clearly hateful speech, which again, are not acceptable and go against all the principles of the freedom of speech that we have. So I don't understand why, despite having having heard these words many times, why are we not able to introduce a measure and take action against these people just to set the example for others who might follow their lead?
Madam Chair, if I may, and I want to thank my honourable colleague for his important question. What I will say to that is I know there's a law in place. We have these parameters in place. It is up to the jurisdictions. I know they're very much engaged, and particularly an event that happened on Wednesday, including in Montreal. And we hope that the local law enforcement agencies will be doing their job to make sure those that incite hate in this country are held accountable.
Very much. I now go to the New Democratic Party, Nikki Ashton. Miss Ashton, 6 minutes, please.
Thank you. Welcome, Minister. In the foreword of the current anti-racism strategy, you said, quote, since the events of October 7th, 2023, we have seen unprecedented levels of hate towards Jewish, Muslim, Arab, and Palestinian communities right here in Canada. This is unquestionably true. We've seen a worrying explosion of hate and anger since then directed at members of these communities. The reality is no Jewish family should worry about the safety of their kids when they drop them off at Hebrew school. No Muslim should fear violence as they walk into a mosque. We have a responsibility as legislators to do everything in our power to protect communities from hate. Which is why I don't understand why your Liberal government steadfastly refused to define anti-Palestinian racism. You acknowledge it's a problem. The strategy explicitly recognizes Palestinians as a group that faces a unique form of racism. You acknowledge work needs to be done, but for some reason refuse to actually do that work. You refuse to consult with community members on the topic. Their voices were silenced. This can't come as a surprise. Thousands of Canadians wrote to you, calling on you to define anti-Palestinian racism. I've raised this repeatedly with officials in your office, and we've also raised it here at committee. And I would argue that ignoring these calls is frankly a clear and explicit example of systemic anti-Palestinian racism. You've refused to give a clear reason why you refuse to define anti-Palestinian racism. My question is, did you intentionally leave out anti-Palestinian racism from your Liberal anti-racism strategy, yes or no?
Madam Chair, if I may, and I want to thank my honourable colleague for the question, and I want to be very clear to all Canadians that this strategy is designed to support all Canadians that experience discrimination and racism, including Palestinian Canadians. That is very clear in the strategy. I think it's also important to recognize the fact that this strategy is meant to be evergreen. We never had a strategy. We put forward it in 2017 alongside community members because we knew we needed to do this work. We then extensively met with community members across this country, Madam Chair, to be able to talk about what more we can do to support communities. This came out of, Madam Speaker, the two summits that our government held on combating anti-Semitism and, of course, combating Islamophobia. We are obviously going to continue to listen to Canadians from all different backgrounds because we need to make sure this is a policy that every Canadian can see in. This is meant for every Canadian, including Palestinian Canadians.
With all due respect, the actual substance of the anti-racism strategy does not actually call out anti-Palestinian racism. And I want to go back to that question of consultation and definition. Given the fact that you refuse to define anti-Palestinian racism, I thought it would be appropriate to read into the record the definition provided by the Arab Canadian Lawyers Association. Anti-Palestinian racism takes various forms, including denying the Nakba and justifying violence against Palestinians, failing to acknowledge Palestinians as an indigenous people with a collective identity, belonging, and rights in relation to occupied and historic Palestine, erasing the human rights and equal dignity and worth of Palestinians, excluding or pressuring others to exclude Palestinian perspectives, Palestinians and their allies, defaming Palestinians and their allies with slander, such as being inherently anti-Semitic, a terrorist threat, or sympathizer or opposed to democratic values. Why do you take issue with the Arab Canadian Lawyers Association definition of anti-Palestinian racism. Why wasn't their voice and their work that is cutting edge on this front included as part of your anti-racism strategy?
Madam Chair, we are going to continue to listen to all Canadians. This strategy is designed to support all Canadians that face racism and discrimination, including Palestinian Canadians. That is, those words are exactly in the strategy, Madam Speaker. We're going to continue to make sure, and I also want to take a moment just to recognize the fact that this is meant to be evergreen. This is meant to evolve with the needs of the communities, and we're constantly going to be listening to communities to make sure that their voices are included and to ensure that we are at the forefront of leading this work. We continue to have very meaningful conversations, not just me. My predecessor had many conversations prior to me taking on this role. This is a work that takes time. This is a work that we need to make sure we are pragmatic and we're thoughtful in the conversations that we have with people, and everyone can see in the strategy that they're reflected in it. Thank you.
Well, I'll outline that it's not evergreen to exclude substantive action on anti-Palestinian racism. This is a very clear type of racism, and it's very disappointing to see the Liberals exclude it from the anti-racism strategy, but continue to play games with Palestinian and Arab communities, trying to score points by doing consultations that are not actually part of the department's work or influencing your anti-racism strategy. Moving on to another critical issue is anti-Indigenous racism, and we know that an insidious form of anti-Indigenous racism is residential school denialism. I'm proud of the work that my colleague MP Leah Gazan has done on this front with her bill, but we know that neither your party, the Liberals, or the Conservatives have come out with a clear position on this bill. And from the Conservatives, we've heard some very problematic statements, including from at least one candidate, Aaron Gunn, who thinks the only injustice of the residential school system isn't the genocide, but what's said about John A. Macdonald. Absolutely horrifying anti-Indigenous example of racism. Do you support my colleague Leah Gazan's bill, yes or no?
Madam Chair, I think we can all agree in this place the tragic...
It's a yes or no answer.
Madam Chair, as we all know, I think, and it's in the strategy as well, anti-Indigenous racism has played our systems systematically for generations. We as a government have been doing everything that we can to support communities on the ground. The work that my colleagues, Minister Ananda Sangri and Patty Hadu, has been leading is, we know of the impact of that on the ground, and it's unfortunate that the member is playing political games with this, because I think this is fundamentally something that we need to be working on together, and we're going to continue.
This is not a debate, Ms. Ashton. I think the time is up. We're going to go to the second round, and this is a 5-minute round. And so we begin with Mr. JIVANI for 5 minutes, please, for the Conservatives.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Minister's colleague, MP Anthony Housefather, is actually on Twitter right now agreeing with the Conservative position that Sammy Doon should be listed as a terrorist entity. I wonder if the Minister responsible for anti-racism would agree with her colleague, Mr. Housefather, and the Conservative Party on that position.
Madam Chair, I'm not sure if my colleague was in the House during question period, and this was a question that was posed to the Minister of Public Safety, and I think he was very clear in his answer. Any indication or...
Good enough for Mr. Housefather, so I thought maybe the party's position had changed since then. Madam
Chair, through you, I think we can all agree any listing of a terrorist organization is not done by politicians, it's done by the advice of our national and security intelligence. We take public safety extremely seriously. This is a work that our intelligence does on a daily basis, with our Five Eye partners, and the Minister, as he mentioned in the House of Commons today.
I think the Minister may want to meet with Mr. Housefather to discuss this, but okay, answer received. No,
Madam Chair, I think it's important to get the answer on the record.
I
think it's important to get my answer on the record. Thank you. And as the Minister of Public Safety indicated, that he has urgently asked for an expedited advice from the National Security Intelligence, and he'll have an answer in the next coming days.
I don't think that's fast enough for Mr. Housefather. I hope you guys can have a conversation.
Mr. Housefather is not a member of this
It's on Twitter. You can look at it. Okay.
Let's move on.
We'll keep moving. Does the minister support the government's black justice strategy as part of the anti-racism strategy?
Absolutely.
Are you familiar with some of the radical criminal justice policies that your government's black justice strategy is considering at the moment?
Madam Speaker, I think it's important to recognize that the work that we're leading, working alongside Black communities right across this country, is fundamentally something that we have heard from communities members on the ground of addressing systemic racism within our criminal justice system, which is important that we address. This is the work that my colleague, Minister JIVANI, is leading. There's nothing that has been, there's no decisions have been made yet around the strategy, but I know we're going to be working alongside community members to make sure that communities...
Is the minister familiar with a document called the Roadmap for Transformative Change that was released this summer?
Madam Speaker, this is a work that my colleague, Minister JIVANI, is leading. We have very meaningful conversations on how to address systemic racism within our criminal justice system, which we know.
Your colleague, Minister JIVANI, described this document as, quote, history-making for the black community and, quote, important milestone for the black community. It seems like something the anti-racism strategy leader may be familiar with, but it sounds like you're not. So just to recap
Point of
a couple
order,
of the...
Madam Chair? Yes. It's not appropriate for a committee member. They may ask their questions, but suggesting things that have not been said into the record is inappropriate. And I would ask that Mr. JIVANI just stick to his thoughts and not try to speak on behalf of the minister. She's more than capable of doing that on her own. Unless he would like to just continue with his questions, then committee can get back to it.
That's not a point of order, Madam Chair. You know, as a black Canadian, I've been assured that the anti-racism strategy is a whole of government approach. And if my community is told by the Minister of Justice that something is, and I quote, history-making and important milestone for black people, that the leader of the anti-racism strategy would be familiar with it. I think that's a fair question. Nonetheless, some of the policies that are included in this include mass decarceration, reducing the number of incarcerated people by 30% over the next 10 years, decriminalizing a supply of 30 days worth of hard drugs, including cocaine, heroin, and meth, and also defunding police departments by removing 25% of federal grants from eligibility to police organizations. So the question I have is, do you support these radical criminal justice policies that your government has published as part of the Black Justice Strategy?
Madam Speaker, I think it would only be a conservative making a joke out of, making a joke out of systemic racism that we have seen an over-incarceration of black and indigenous people in our criminal justice system. To be making a joke about that it is disgraceful. But I expect better. I would think I would expect better
allow the minister
from people.
to answer the question, please.
Nobody's laughing, Madam Chair. They're flooding our communities with drugs. Is a problem.
That's not true.
Go to the second question for 5 minutes, please. The Liberals, Jennifer O'Connor. Ms. O'Connor, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the Minister, thank you for being here today. Mr. JIVANI spoke about what's on Twitter, so let's talk about a few things that's also on Twitter. I'm wondering, given, as we've talked about a lot here from all colleagues, about the increasing rise in anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, certainly Holocaust denialism is something that I have never seen before like this. And certainly I wonder if you think it would be helpful when members of the Conservative Party go and sit and dine with German politicians who actually within their party believe that the Holocaust was a hoax. I wonder if conservatives who care a lot about what happens on Twitter posting and amplifying hateful rhetoric towards the Jewish community, and those members still sit in the front row of conservative benches, have gone there's been no retribution or reprimand for promoting people who share hateful Holocaust denialism. Do you think that is helpful in the reduction of anti-Semitic hate that we're seeing in this country?
How ridiculous do you guys find it that in a sensitive issue like this, they send in the smelly cat to throw gas on the gaslighting that they're doing to Canadians right now? And they were disrespectful to JIVANI. She turns it into making a joke. Oh, you think this is a big joke? She's saying that to a black guy. Who would know more about racism than JIVANI? I'm sure that KAMAL KHERA had some instances growing up, not like JIVANI. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
Thank you. We're all shocked, and that's why I find it a bit rich every single time conservative members would get up and talk about hate when their own members would actively meet with neo-Nazis from Germans and still not denounce and apologize for that. The fact that their own leader will go meet with white supremacists of Diagolon, which we know, an organization that fundamentally believe that people like you and I, Madam Speaker, do not exist in Canada.
Madam Chair, I expect when a minister is coming here that they're going to behave with such decorum that we can have a discussion around the topic at hand instead of trying to bring disorder to this area. I would ask you, Madam Chair, the same way we'd ask the Speaker in the House to encourage members, to remember we are all honourable members and not to use their pedestal to be able to throw such, such rhetoric.
Aspiration of
no,
hate.
Excuse me, I have the floor here.
I mean, it is on Twitter.
No, that she's a minister of the Crown.
This isn't a point of order.
And simply throwing out things that cause disorder, Madam Chair, I believe is against the whole purpose of this meeting.
I will allow the minister to answer. Go ahead, Minister.
My honourable colleague needs to realize the fact that there are consequences to their actions. There are consequences to the actions that their leaders and their members of the Conservative Party make. When their leader was actively putting on his hashtag videos, putting on hashtags on his YouTube videos that attract men who hate women, that has consequences. When he meets with a far-right extremist and do not denounce that, that has consequences. Diagolon is an organization that fundamentally believe that you and I, Madam Speaker, people of color do not exist in Canada. That has consequences. When they meet with neo-Nazis, German neo-Nazis, and do not denounce that they've done that, that has consequences for people on the ground. It is shameful for the Conservative members to sit there and pretend like they care about hate in this country when they know within their caucus there are people that court to this far-right extremist that has real consequences for people on the ground. We have seen that in our communities. We have seen that, unfortunately, lives have been taken away. There's consequences to hate, and they need to apologize to Canadians and denounce such hate when it occurs in this country.
Thank you, Minister. Following up on recent meetings of Conservatives with those who distribute hate on our streets, as their questions spoke about off the top, Mr. Cooper, another MP for the Conservative Party, just a couple of weeks ago, was seen meeting with those who were protesting, holding up Russian flags. They really are uncomfortable.
Point of order, Mr. Wall.
Mr. Cooper did not meet with them. He was at a restaurant where these individuals were there.
Kevin, you can't answer that. This is a point of order. I think that what we see here is when we allowed questions to be asked about other members, about people like Mr. Housefather, about naming other groups as being hate groups, I think this is fair game to ask questions about groups that are considered to be hateful and who meets with them. And I think that this is a reasonable question to ask, and I think Ms. O'Connell, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and they did open that door, and that's precisely why I'm raising these questions. Mr. Cooper met with groups in Ottawa who we saw firsthand were spreading disinformation towards queer kids and trans people in this country, a level of violence that the members opposite have not raised, the Conservatives in particular have not raised. Can you speak about hate towards our queer kids and how, once again, meeting with individuals who spread such hate on our streets only emboldens them and does not reduce hate and does not create a culture of inclusivity?
Thank you. Minister, I will give you 30 seconds to answer that because I took out the time for the points of order and the discussion on the floor. Thank you. Go ahead. You have 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my colleague is absolutely right. There are consequences to hate. If you leave it unchecked, it has real consequences on the ground. And as Ms. O'Connell mentioned, when you see members of an official opposition, when you see members of the PIERRE POILIEVRE Conservatives meet with these groups that incite hate within communities, it has consequences for people on the ground. They need to apologize to Canadians. They need to denounce their acts because Canadians deserve better because lives are at stake. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I now go to document 4. Martin Shampoo, 2.5 minutes, please, Martin.
Merci, Madame la Ministre.
Thank you, Minister. This will be quick, but I might need to interrupt you, so apologies for that. Minister, do you think that Amira Al-Gawabi is doing a good job? Do you support the words she has been saying since her appointment?
Madam Chair, our Special Representative on Combating Islamophobia does incredibly important work to support Muslim Canadians right across this country.
Comme je vous disais, Madame la Ministre.
Minister, as I was saying, okay, so Madame Al-Gawabi said in 2019 that in Quebec there is an anti-Muslim feeling that's generalized. Do you agree with that?
I think it's important to recognize, Madam Speaker, that Ms. Al-Gawabi speaks to many Muslim Canadians right across this country, including in Quebec, and I think it's important to recognize the important conversations that she has with community members and to make sure that we're addressing some of those concerns as we do with all Canadians.
Donc, Madame la Ministre, c'est correct pour vous de généraliser.
So, Minister, it's okay for you to generalize and say that in Quebec, in general, people are anti-Muslim, and he's also was exchanging with Mr. Joseph Howell on Twitter and said that they suffered from British colonialism in Canada. That's the biggest community. And she responded saying, I'm going to vomit, Ms. Al-Gawabi. And then she also recently said that universities should hire more Muslim, Palestinian and Arab professors to help people better understand the situation. And you answered a question in the House recently about documents and emails that Madam Al-Gawabi should produce, and she hasn't, despite a request to access for information. So will you continue to say that Madam Al-Gawabi is a good person to build bridges between communities or making sure that there is a calm social environment? So do you not agree that this person, and taking into account the position of the Quebec government, National Assembly, should she still be in position?
Chair, through you, if I may, the honourable member talked about universities and colleges. I think it's important to recognize that universities and colleges make decisions about their own hiring practices. They all have their own rules about diversity and inclusion. Ms. Al-Gawabi does important work talking to community members in her role as a special envoy on combating Islamophobia in this country and making sure that we're having, we know systemic racism is real within our institutions across this country. She plays an important role in talking to community members, makes recommendations to ensure that we're supporting communities on the ground. I think it's important to have those important conversations alongside members. I hope my member from Bloc will agree that we need to be doing this work.
Time is up. Thank you. Now I'm going to go to Nikki Ashton for the NDP. 2.5 minutes, please. 2.5 minutes, Nikki.
Thank you. Minister, you've referred a fair bit to the whole of government approach that is very important for your department. So I want to just reflect on that for a moment. Take, for example, the lawyers that represent Canada in court, as they have been this week, fighting First Nations like Shamattawa and Tataskiwak Cree Nation in my region in northern Manitoba. In arguments filed with the court obtained by my office, Liberal government-hired lawyers argued that First Nations don't have a right to clean drinking water and that seeks to blame First Nations for this government's own failures. I struggle to take this seriously when the same Liberal hired lawyers say that any proclamation is just, quote, context specific, which, as one lawyer explained to me, is basically just legalese for political theatre. We have the Prime Minister who's been quoted as saying everyone in Canada should have access to clean water. The Government of Canada continues to work in partnership with First Nations. However, your lawyers, your government's lawyers, deny that there's a partnership. Or former Minister Mark Miller, who said, but one thing has not changed, the right for individuals to have access to potable water, and we are determined to ensure that this right is upheld for everyone. Once again, Liberal lawyers this week argued that this right should not, in fact, be upheld for everyone. You've come here to talk about your anti-racism strategy that incorporates a significant piece on anti-Indigenous racism. You've talked about the importance of a whole-of-government approach. And yet your government is fighting 59 First Nations, including some of the poorest First Nations in Canada, who do not have clean drinking water, and telling them that your commitments don't actually apply to them, that they are context-specific, that your government does not actually have an obligation to provide clean drinking water. Is that not an example of systemic racism at play? Does that not fly in the face of the commitment to reconciliation your government has made? How can you stand by with a commitment to whole-of-government approach, with a commitment to anti-Indigenous racism and action on that front, when your own government is denying one of the most basic human rights to First Nations, the right to clean drinking water?
I think we all agree that every single person should have access to clean drinking water. That is fundamentally something that we as a government, after years of underfunding by the Conservative governments, that we have been working alongside members of our community, members of the Indigenous partners right across this country. We'll continue to do this work till we make sure that there is no one left that cannot have clean drinking water in this country.
Sure. I now move to the second round, we're still on the second round. Mr. Good, for you are sharing with Kevin Wall, are you? Go ahead. 5 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Minister. Thank you to the department officials. Now, I'll have more of a technical question. But Madam Minister, I will ask that you answer the question. I was looking at the news and I saw an article by Milan Craig, and what drew my attention was the following. Canada's anti-Islamophobia special representative should provide 3,000 pages of documents to La Presse, and there's been recently an instruction for the production of these documents, but Madam Al-Gawabi chose to ignore this request. So there is an instruction from the Commissioner that actually goes beyond the request, a request for access to information. And 3,000 pages, that ties into a complaint. So the documents were not produced. Was it because the office of Madame Al-Gawabi refused to do so, or the Canadian Heritage, or yourself? Who was involved? Because according to the article, it's not very clear. So if you can explain to me how things unfolded.
This is a very important question, and I think it's important to first and foremost recognize we are always committed to an open and transparent government. Because of the scope of the request, I know extension was required, but I will turn to my officials to be able to give you a fulsome answer of the process.
Je vais vous répondre en français. Alors, quelques...
I'll answer your question in French. So the first point is that the office of the special representative was very small when they started, so she built her team as she went along. And the second point is that At the department, we are offering services to the special representative in these kinds of processes, and we could have done a better job in that process. But as you mentioned, these instructions, these requests will be sent directly to my office rather than just to the ATIP office. So I take personal responsibility for not having supported the special representative as we should have. So if I understand this correctly, they went beyond the deadline, and now you're going to take care of it personally? Absolutely. And had I known, I would have made additional resources available to help the special representative. And initially, she had a very small office, so the procedure will now be different going forward. So last question. The documents, have they been provided now? Yes, last Monday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations. 2 minutes and 50 seconds on the dot, Mr. Gould. Really well done. Kevin, you now have to keep up that.
A lot of pressure here, Madam Speaker. Thank you to department officials and the minister. Now, according to Canada's new anti-racism strategy, the special envoy on preserving Holocaust remembrance and combating anti-Semitism has, and I'll quote, both an international and domestic role, unquote. You may be aware, Minister, I had the original PMB C-250. It proposed massive penalties for the promotion of anti-Semitism. But in the wisdom of your government, you decided to take my bill. My bill, C-250, had teeth. It was strong. You have weakened this bill. When I look at what your government has done and not done compared to what my bill would have done, it's night and day. So I'm a little concerned when you start taking bills at budget time, putting them in, and then not following up, because my bill 250 had major consequences. I don't see any consequences in the proposed bill that I had from what you have taken today. And I want to know why you haven't followed up on some of my recommendations on C-250.
Madam Chair, if I may, I'd love to hear from my colleague about some of those recommendations.
Well, I wanted to know why you took my bill, first of all. Obviously, you had some ideas. It was a great bill, then why didn't you follow on some of the consequences that I had? On hate speech, on anti-Semitism, on Holocaust denial, which you haven't followed on any of them. We have more anti-Semitism because of your Liberal government today than we did when I brought the bill in a year and a half ago.
That is incorrect. I think we all recognize there's been challenging times, but to imply that there's more anti-Semitism because of one individual or one party is quite, frankly, shameful.
Up, Mr. Waugh. I now go to Mr. Nur Mohammed for the Liberals. 5 minutes, please. Tell it.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being with us today. I am very proud to represent a riding that has a large Jewish community and large institutions of the Jewish community, 6 synagogues, 2 Jewish schools. I'm very proud to have in my riding the oldest mosque in British Columbia. I'm very proud to have a vibrant Sikh community. And, you know, my parents told me that showing up for your community matters. It's not just about words. And on October 7th, I was privileged to attend the remembrance ceremony for victims of October 7th. It was interesting to note that not one Conservative member of Parliament showed up. During Ramadan,
what is up, Mr. Tremblay? Good to see you, Mike.
Conservative member of Parliament showed up to meet with the Muslim community. But showing up also matters in votes, and I would love your thoughts on this. In Vancouver Granville alone, the Conservative Party voted against funding for the Vancouver Holocaust Education Centre, which was a specific line item in the budget. They voted against funding for the expansion of the Jewish Community Centre in my riding. They voted against funding for the Hellenic community in my riding. They voted against funding for the Canada Community Safety Program, which has affected gurdwaras, masajid, and Jewish temples in my riding. What message does it send to Jews, Muslims, Indigenous people, Asian Canadians, and so many others when Conservatives talk about fighting racism and don't show up where it actually matters in the votes that matter to Canadians?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for his question and for always being very pragmatic and always bringing people together. And it's something I think we all fundamentally believe, that we are lucky to have such members in our caucus. When you talk about the work that we're doing to combat anti-Semitism in this country, you're absolutely right. We as a government have been very deliberate about making that choice to invest in Canadians by listening to Canadians. And you know, some of the fundings that you talked about with the Conservative government actually voted against, it's shameful. This came from the recommendations on the summits that we held on combating anti-Semitism. This came from the communities that said we needed to have the support, and they voted against. So you're absolutely right. Millions of dollars for the first ever special envoy Deborah Lyons to fight anti-Semitism and to preserve Holocaust education. We made sure that this position exists within the Government of Canada because we know how much it matters. $25 million for a new Montreal Holocaust Museum, which you alluded to, that they voted against. $5 million for the first ever National Holocaust Remembrance Program within our anti-racism strategy that is going directly for education around Holocaust remembrance and making sure that it never happens again in this country, to make sure we're supporting communities on the ground. You know, funding for the Holocaust Education Center, which we know is fundamental to talking about, the work that needs to happen on the ground. So, it's always a bit rich to hear the Conservatives say anything, because they're all about slogans. They're not about solutions. We know these things take time. It is deliberate work that we need to work alongside community members with partners on the ground. But we have seen them time and time again vote against and cut funding for these very organizations that the communities, the Jewish community has asked for, that they have voted against. It's quite frankly shameful.
Thank you, Minister. And I know I have about 40 seconds.
No, you have a minute.
I have a minute left. Minister, I won't abuse it, Madam Chair. Minister, one of the things that I and I know others have been preoccupied with quite substantially is the role of far-right extremism, the impact that it's been having on women, on journalists, on Indigenous peoples, and the role of misinformation in this. And on May 7th, I had given notice of motion, and Madam Chair, at this time I'd like to move that motion, if I might, which reads as follows. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee undertake a study of no less than 4 meetings to study the concerning rise in far-right extremism in Canada. That study include how far-right extremism plays a role in misinformation and disinformation, how to better support preventable measures for ideologically motivated extremism in Canada, and the connection between far-right extremism and harassment towards journalists, women, Indigenous peoples, Black and racialized communities, members of the 2S LGBTQI+ community, and religious minorities, that the committee report its findings and recommendations to the House, and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, the committee requests that the government table a comprehensive response to the report. This has been distributed, Madam Chair, on May 7th in both official languages, and I would now like to move that motion.
You so moved, but I think we're going to try and get everybody a copy of it because the clerk is looking for it. It was May 7th, which is
yes.
a few months ago. So we're going to get it and send it to everybody. So what I'll do is suspend, but before I do, I want to thank the Minister for coming. I want to thank the Minister for her performance and on being very clear on some of the things she needed to say and answering the questions in a way, sometimes feisty, but there were feisty questions, Minister, so you were feisty in answering them. And I want to thank you for your presence here. So I'm going to suspend now so we can get copies of.
Okay, there's more to this meeting. They only suspend for 10 minutes here. And they're back.
You got it, Nikki? Okay. Well, we have to let Mr. Nur Mohammed move his. Now we've got his motion. Let him speak to it, and then I will entertain things. So I'll put your name down. Let's put Nikki's name down. Yeah? Go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When I gave notice of motion...
Point of order, Madam Chair, if you don't mind. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I thought we discussed this motion already.
No, we never did. It was just sent. It has not
No, back
never been
in May.
discussed. No?
Back in May, you brought the motion out, and in May,
No. It was never tabled. It was sent. Notice of motion was sent.
and we never discussed
No, we
it.
never discussed it.
Could you get a clarification from the clerk?
I'm going to check. I'm
Yeah.
going to check. We never discussed it. I can't remember us ever discussing it.
I would have to go look through the history, but right now, I'm not sure about that.
Okay, Mr. Mohammed, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So while you check on whether it was discussed or not, I mean, I know it was, I can confirm it was never voted on to the best of my recollection. As far as, I don't even know if we discussed it fully, but I do want to make sure that if it has been discussed, that if there needs to be amendments to it, let's amend it, let's vote on it. If it has not been discussed, let's have a proper and robust discussion, which is what I believe we should have. When I initially gave notice of this motion, it was with consultation with other parties because there is a substantial and growing concern about the role of far-right extremism in this country. The connection between the harassment, intimidation of communities and journalists and others as a direct result of misinformation that is being spread through far-right extremist narrative is something that we should all be concerned about, regardless of our political parties, regardless of which part of the country we come from. This is something that Canadians, I think, would expect us to take seriously. This is not about targeting any one specific ethnic group. It is actually about all Canadians. And I think our opportunity here as a committee is to undertake a serious, very real study about the way in which far-right extremism in this country is impacting people's lives in very, very serious and very dangerous ways. So I'm hopeful that all in this committee will support this motion and we can get going on ensuring that we put time down for this study and we have the hard conversations that we need to have to come back with recommendations and that we get government to ensure that we get a comprehensive response to that report in short order.
Ms. Ashton?
I would like to make an amendment to the motion.
By the way, I checked with the analyst and it was posted, but it was tabled, but it was never discussed.
Okay. So the amendment is after the committee, in the language after the committee, which is in line 1, we would add, condemn the leader of the official opposition for visiting a convoy camp that celebrated far-right extremists and a group whose founder was referred to as a violent extremist by Canada's Integrated Terrorism Assessment Centre. And.
Can you be slower a little bit, please?
Yeah.
We're trying to type it. Go ahead.
We can send you a copy. I think we may have. Yeah, we already have. Oui, la copie qu'on a envoyée, c'est en français, bilingue.
It's bilingual.
Yes, please repeat it, Nikki.
Okay, so after the committee in line 1, we propose to add, condemn the leader of the official opposition for visiting a convoy camp that celebrated far-right extremists and a group whose founder was referred to as a violent extremist by Canada's Integrated Terrorism Assessment Centre and.
Thank you. So now we have an amendment on the floor. We're going to discuss the amendment. Michael, the amendment?
Point of order. Point of order, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Moore.
We're seeing that May 9th this was discussed. It's in the minutes.
The analyst just looked it up.
It's in the minutes of May 9th. And would also like to suspend. But we did see it in the minutes from May 9th and would like to suspend.
I don't think the suspending can be done in order. So
Well,
I have the floor.
no, I have a request to suspend so that the
Hold on.
one party can discuss amongst them.
But I had the floor. He did a point of order. His point of order was to bring reference to the May 9th reference. And then he said, can we suspend? That doesn't, you can't do that.
Yes, he can do that. He can ask for
On a point of order, I can just say point of order
no,
anytime
no,
and
no, no,
request
no.
to suspend?
He didn't ask for, said he had a point of order,
I
which
won't
was to
argue with
say
the chair.
it was already discussed, Mr.
I won't
Cotto,
argue- I
and
won't
now
argue
he's
with the
saying he
chair.
wants to suspend. I don't see the problem in suspending for a short period of time for the Conservatives to discuss amongst themselves how they deal with this. Okay? Go ahead, and Liberals can discuss, and everybody else can discuss, talk to themselves.
All right, gang, we're going to drop into some other videos. What we've got to show right away is, yeah, we're going to jump into, I'm going to show Jagmeet's speech from today. He identified with the announcement that Melanie Joly and Justin Trudeau made yesterday, and I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. I'm sure it's
the RCMP allegations that were shared, the information that was shared yesterday, are deeply, deeply disturbing. The RCMP basically painted a picture that a foreign government is engaging criminal elements in Canada to perpetrate violence against Canadians, including shooting at homes, shooting at Canadians' homes, killing Canadians, shooting at Canadian businesses, shooting at Canadian communities. We saw in the past year an uptake, a serious increase in gun violence. And the RCMP is pointing to the fact that a portion of that, a significant portion, can be attributed to a foreign government hiring criminal elements. This is a threat to anyone that lives in those communities. Anyone that has family in those communities, kids playing in the parks where those homes were shot at or those businesses were shot at. This is serious. I love our country. I love our democracy. I would do anything to protect it. I can't imagine or understand any political leader who wouldn't also do anything to protect our country. And that's why it troubles me deeply that Pierre Poilievre is unwilling to receive security clearance and to fully understand what's going on. I don't want the Indian government, which is who the RCMP has implicated in this, and the Modi government specifically, I don't want the Indian government or Modi to think they've got someone in Canada who's willing to look the other way to ignore what's going on. We need to take an approach where we're all on the same side, that we're all denouncing this serious series of allegations, and that we're standing united to do everything possible to protect Canadians. That's why my team will be calling for an emergency meeting of the Public Safety Committee to look at other steps we can take to keep Canadians safe. We will also urge Canada to ban the RSS, which is a right-wing extremist militant group from India that has branches in other countries, including in Canada, that promotes violence and division. We'll also urge Canada to impose severe and strict sanctions on Indian diplomats. We need to take every step possible to keep Canadians safe. The RCMP has exposed a very serious threat. And now let's take that threat seriously and act accordingly. Ce que la GRC a partagé est vraiment inquiétant. C'est vraiment troublant. J'adore parce qu'on ne veut de la security. Any questions you might have?
What more can you tell us about the briefing you received yesterday?
The briefing confirmed what was shared publicly, that this is a very serious allegation, a series of allegations. It confirmed some of the background of how it got here. But really what it highlighted is that we've got the Indian government, specifically the Modi government, that is engaged through diplomats in Canada, criminal elements that have then gone on to shoot at Canadian homes, to shoot at Canadian businesses, to kill Canadians. That is very serious. As the RCMP mentioned, the briefing also mentioned that there are deep concerns for Canadian safety. And that's why I really believe it is our responsibility. If we believe in protecting our country, I love this country, we need to do everything possible to keep people safe and to keep our democracy safe. And that's why I'm committed to the actions that I've laid out, additional steps to see what we can do to keep Canadians safe by having an emergency meeting of the Public Safety Committee, as well as making sure that we take steps to ban this extremist organization, the RSS, that comes from India, as well as making sure that we impose these severe sanctions on Indian diplomats.
Are you being targeted?
It's not about me. This is about the fact that Canadians are at serious threat and serious risk. what the RCMP described as something that should be really troubling. When these acts of violence happen, if someone's shooting, if an organized member of crime is being hired or being engaged by a diplomat, which just sounds just incredibly disturbing, if that's happening, that threatens everyone that lives in that community, everyone that lives in that neighborhood. When businesses are being shot at, anyone that lives nearby, anyone that's walking nearby, this is a threat to all Canadians, and it should be taken with the utmost seriousness.
Monsieur Singh, quand même la question de ma collègue est pertinente. Vous, est-ce que vous êtes ciblé? Puis en sous-question, si on prend
À travers le pays, le GRC.
bientôt, peut-être.
Donc, ça rapidement, that there was increased shootings. The fact that a portion of those shootings can be attributed to the fact that a foreign government engaged criminal elements in our country to shoot up Canadian homes, to shoot up Canadian businesses. Like, this puts everyone at risk. This doesn't just put those people targeted. You've got guns, you got bullets flying. That's going to put everyone that lives nearby at risk. And so this is very, very serious. And it goes very deep, the fact that the RCMP's laid out that diplomats from the Indian government were involved in hiring and directing criminal organized crime members in Canada is deeply serious, and it should be taken with the utmost seriousness. And that's why I got to say again, I find it troubling that the only federal leader in our country right now that has not gotten security clearance to hear about foreign interference is PIERRE POILIEVRE. I don't want the Indian government to think that there's one political leader willing to look the other way when this serious level of allegations are being put forward. And that's why I'm urging him to put partisanship aside.
We can see what old Jagstick is doing here, right? The problems that we're having in Canada right now have nothing to do with PIERRE POILIEVRE, the decisions he makes. He's not, like, he's leader of the opposition, but it's so ridiculous. They're working in a government that's not a minority, it's a coalition. So Jagmeet is the issue here, and he's saying that it's because of Poilievre, but it's not. It's because he continues to support Trudeau for stupid things that don't matter, like dental care, child care, and pharmacare. These things will not help us. The provinces are supposed to run that stuff, and he's up here lying, and that is it. It's as simple as that. I don't know.
Side, get the security clearance, know what's going on. Let's have a united front. Let's be together on the same side against the Modi government, against the Indian government that's putting Canadian lives at risk.
On the issue, that's what he says. He won't get the clearance because he wants to be able to speak freely. Since you've received the clearance, do you feel hindered at all? Do you feel you're able to speak freely about foreign interference?
Absolutely. I've spoken freely. I've disagreed. After I received the briefing, I disagreed with the finding of the special rapporteur. If folks remember, he came with a certain conclusion. I read the documents in that case, and I came up with a different conclusion, and I rejected what the special rapporteur had said. And so there is no that's a false allegation. That is a false thing that Mr. Poilievre is saying. That somehow would limit. I've been able to say anything I need to say. That focuses on protecting Canadians, and that should be the priority. A leader should have in their mind the utmost and most important thing is country first, protecting our country, protecting Canadians. I can only think that
he's saying that as he continues to prop up Trudeau. We could have an election now. A lot of our issues that we're facing, which are Liberal NDP coalition issues that have been generated since especially 2018, it's been nuts. The aggressive left-wing tactics that they're pulling on us, trying to get us to eat the bugs. And pay attention, Jagmeet.
He's making the decision for partisan reasons, and I'm urging him to put partisanship aside. We've just heard from the RCMP that Canadians are being targeted. Canadians are being shot at. Their homes are being shot at. Their businesses are being shot at. They're being extorted. And it directly is being alleged, it is directly being orchestrated by Indian government officials. Knowing that, I can't imagine why anyone who is a leader in our country wouldn't want to get every piece of information possible. There is a reason why every other federal leader has agreed to look at those documents, has agreed to get the security clearance. And that's why I'm deeply troubled that Pierre Poilievre wants to be the only federal leader in a time when we have active threats against Canadians, that he wants to be the only leader that doesn't want to look at what's going on. That does send a message to the Indian government that there's one leader that's willing to look away. That to me is deeply troubling.
Yes or no? We're gonna.
It's hard to figure out.
Yes or no, Mr. Singh? Has the RCMP warned you that you are being targeted by India or that there are threats against you? Yes or no? I think Canadians would be interested to know if there is a political leader in Canada being targeted. So I know you don't want to talk about yourself, but has the RCMP warned you?
As I've said, it's not about me. I mean, the RCMP putting forward the seriousness of what they've described yesterday should be enough for us all to be very worried. And talking about myself does not in any way help Canadians to realize what the RCMP talked about, what they've shared, the allegations they put forward, the threats to Canadians, the threat to Canadian lives, the threat to Canadian homes and businesses, the fact that there's extortion going on. This is serious. And I want to focus on the fact that this is a threat to Canada, threat to our democracy, threat to Canadian lives, and that's something we take seriously.
An opposition party being targeted in a democracy is serious, Mr. Singh.
Et pourtant, l'Inde collabore avec les États-Unis et pas avec les autorités canadiennes. Pourquoi vous pensez la réponse différente entre les deux pays? Qu'est-ce que ça vous dit sur l'influence canadienne à l'international?
In English, too, please.
Sure. Je pense qu'on doit travailler ensemble avec nos alliés parce que c'est clair que c'est quelque chose qui se passe pas seulement au Canada. Comme vous avez mentionné, il y a une enquête qui se passe assez.
All right, gang. We're done with Singh. We're going to listen to this one. Sorry, there's a chance you may have seen this before, but I don't think so.
Leadership of sellout Jagmeet Singh. This is a party that...
When I'm Prime Minister, I will keep my promises.
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal...
Never will be in government. That they're against members of Parliament being able to get their foot in the door to apply for a secret security clearance. I thought the NDP was all about accountability.
While I'm Prime Minister, I will keep my promises.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And while I fully respect your ruling on the scope of the amendment, at least that it is within scope on a technical basis, this really does add a whole new layer to what is a two-sentence, one-clause bill. I think it is important that we understand what the purpose and effect of the bill put forward by my colleague, Mr. Ruff, would be, because it seems, with the greatest of respect to some of my colleagues here in this committee, that it has been lost on some members. And it's not to say that concerns about protecting classified information, concerns around national security that they raised are illegitimate. They are legitimate. But they have really nothing to do with the purpose and effect of this bill if it were to come into law. And to that end, I would underscore that this two-sentence, one-clause bill would amend the Parliament of Canada Act so that every member of Parliament and senator can apply for a secret level security clearance. Nothing more, nothing less. That's it. It doesn't in any way provide that upon...
All right, gang, I just heard that this that MP Michael Cooper is Dime Bag Coins MP. Anybody else have their MP like in the show today? Just kind of curious to see if anybody has.
Nothing more than receiving that accreditation, but I'd still have to establish a need to know, and it would still be within the control of the government to share anything with me. I could have such a clearance and have no information of a secret, classified nature revealed to me. Now, you can have a discussion about issues and processes around how the government controls information, how it's shared, but that is, again, not the purpose of this bill. This bill has nothing to do with that. It is about as narrow in scope of a bill as one could draft, hence it being a two-sentence, one-clause bill. And so I would have thought that given how straightforward it is, and I would also add, given that it was in fact a unanimous recommendation of this committee that there be processes in place for members to be able to receive security clearances to better understand national security matters, and given I think NSCOP has weighed in. This has been raised at the National Inquiry on Foreign Interference. That this bill would have gotten out of committee after one meeting, quite frankly. But we heard, and I think there's some members who seem to think it's funny.
Oh, that was something.
Oh, okay. No worries. Well, because I just don't find this very funny. I find it actually dispiriting that
come on.
We have members insulting me. I think that just underscores the tone that we have, and why this is so disappointing, because we have someone like Mr. Ruff, who has served his country in the Canadian Armed Forces for 25 years, who has a very good understanding of matters of national security, who has received a security clearance at the highest level and has held that for a number of years, who sits on NSCOP and therefore has a unique perspective as a member of Parliament. And we have certain members who don't have that background, don't have that experience, don't have that knowledge, who didn't even have the courtesy to talk to him, and table drop a bunch of sub-amendments that have nothing to do with his bill. Now, I will submit that there's one basis for that, and that is that they don't want this bill to pass. They would rather gut the bill, and it's passing strange for a party like the NDP that has never been in government, hopefully never will be in government, that they're against members of Parliament being able to get their foot in the door to apply for a secret security clearance. I thought the NDP was all about accountability. I guess now under the leadership of sellout Jagmeet Singh.
Chair?
Yeah, point of order from Ms. Matheson.
I'm really really sorry that I made the member mad, but maybe he can focus back on the comments that he was going to make about the bill, as opposed to trying to insult in a sideways my leader. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Cooper, I didn't quite catch whatever exchange happened a few moments ago, but nonetheless, if you can keep your remarks, please, to the matter at hand. Thank you.
Under the leadership of sellout Jagmeet Singh, this is a party that...
Mr. Cooper...
You were told once
I have a
and asked once kindly.
Everyone knows Jagmeet Singh is a sellout. And,
okay.
Cooper?
And Mr.
All right.
Chair, going back to the supplement...
Mr. Cooper, I have the floor now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to suspend so that everybody can catch their breath, maybe have some water, maybe a bite to eat, maybe use the water.
Pretty ridiculous, guys. We're going to try this just to see if we can do it. There we go.
Oh my, I don't have my face on or anything.
No, you're all set. You look great. I don't have my face on either.
All right, ambush, eh?
It's not meant to be an ambush. What did you think of the show? Anything that stood out about today's episode?
Just, yeah, the deflection about India. That's all it is, smoke and mirrors.
Like, that's fresh in our minds because Jagmeet came out there and said that all the issues that we have to do with India are Pierre Poilievre's fault because he didn't read something that really has not much to do with him until he's in control, you know? Like, that's the way that I felt about it.
Well, every mainstream piece of media out there is all over this, pumping the hell out of it. And it's just a distraction. Trudeau's got a whole world of hurt coming down upon him, and he would sure love people to forget all about that stuff.
No, for sure. What about the committee video? What was your favorite part? JAMIL JIVANI being strong, HEDY Fry being confused, that KAMAL KHERA, like, and her sourness and deceit, or possibly Jen O'Connell. Who in the hell sends in Smelly Cat, that committee, to ask those questions at that time? Only people that are trying to throw gas on the fire.
Other than JIVANI, it's such a weak committee. There's nobody there that's of consequence that could really make an earth shake. I don't know. It's a nothing burger to me.
I did enjoy watching. That's the most that I've seen of KAMAL KHERA. And so now I know what to expect. Like, she's just another snowflake in the. There we go. Mr. Pickles is joining us.
Pickles, how are you, sir?
I'm super, man. You?
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Yeah, me neither. What's going on, us?
Oh, I don't know.
There we go.
There you are.
We're all set. What's up, Pickles?
What's going on, Aaron?
Too much, man.
This whole, you know, it really ruined the day yesterday, right? And like, I just, why?
Why
like,
are they
for
doing
what
that,
purpose?
Ben? Explain to the group why you think they're doing it right when they did it.
Oh, they're fucking squirming for sure. Like, they're just about fucking done, right? You got Revolt in the caucus. Well, he's off in communist Laos, and, you know, everybody hates him. He's got whatever, he's fourth in the polls, like, for retaining seats. Like, they're running out of moves is what's happening. But I mean, to go on and to bring this out on a national holiday, right? Well, everybody's having Thanksgiving, whatever, fucking watching, you know, whatever on TV, so everybody could see it. right? And just why would you do that? And there's nothing new that they said. It's the same shit they said last September.
Now you get Max Blast on Thanksgiving, but it sure was a Bush League move. I'm sure people are going to see through that. That was lame. I saw it on eating turkey with the grands, and all of a sudden I just burst out laughing, and everybody's looking at me, and I just continued on and explained. But
now everywhere you go on social media, it's just it's Pierre in India this and like you guys realize who let all these Indians in the country, right? And who lets them in? Doesn't even check them now. Like you guys know who that was, right? You know,
absolutely.
Like it makes zero sense at all. But yet, all over social media, it's just shit bashing the conservatives. And I'm like, this must have been planned out. Obviously, it was, because the amount of like trashing to the conservatives I've seen in the last 24 hours, it's crazy.
It's getting brutal, but they're desperate. They are desperate. That means it's getting close.
You got this whole week now, and nobody's sitting, so I don't know, man. You know,
they're going to keep pumping India as a distraction, and hopefully we forget about 11 names or STTC documents that are going to put people in jail. Yeah, this is BS.
Like the conservatives are the ones that are screwing the country because they refuse to send it to committee. And so now everything's at a dead halt, right? No new bills, can't do new parliamentary business. Yeah, because if it goes to committee, it's going to get buried and then just go nowhere. Like every other scandal that's gone to committee, gets filibustered and just buried.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Good on them, man. Like, I hope all the bills, I hope they do prorogue parliament. And if they don't, these bills are going nowhere anyway.
That's right.
You got a year, another year of this shit? Really?
Jag Meat was sure butthurt about Pierre Poilievre not getting a security clearance. He's really butthurt about it. So he's scared, I figure. He must be one of the 11.
What do you think, Aaron?
I'm having trouble making sense out of exactly the motivation. I just know the tactics. I don't know why they're doing it, other than I think that by now it's an evil reason that's duping people. Again, my opinions on it are pretty dark. It's very sinister, the current NDP Liberal coalition, and the tactics they use are so much dirtier. They've expanded by the degree that the size of the money involved in the scandals has. You know what I mean? It used to be a $10,000 free something, and now it's $400 million. Well,
the slush one was what, $800 million, but they only audited half of it, and then of that half, they found 186 instances of giving it to a liberal, corruption, whatever. So, if they did the whole 800, so.
Wouldn't you think normally you would automatically start auditing the other portion that wasn't audited? That's the natural step to me.
If you own a business, you audit your business all the time.
But you would think there'd be a mechanism going, somebody needs to wake up and say, what about the rest? Let's look at them too. Let's do a grand total.
What do you guys what do you guys think of this? That they just got in at a time when they were like, Canadians are sleeping. They've got it so good that we can manipulate this system to the best of our advantage. That's our long-term plan. Get a couple of terms out of this. Once it starts getting hairy and they start figuring it out, they do the stuff that they're doing, which are taking away our rights. Not that anybody really has rights. Sorry, I watched a 4-hour documentary with George Carlin last night, so I'm all fired up. But
you're all revved up, yeah.
Did you ever see the documentary HBO did? It's 2 parts, 2 hours long. Two hour parts.
I've seen a lot of George Carlin stuff, man, and he had this shit figured out 40 years ago.
It's interesting to see the evolution of his career, and how he went.
I'll agree with you, right? And it goes back to what I say, the chain of freedom. If you were a dog, one link is reduced over time. Soon you're down to one link, and you don't even realize what you lost. So in 2015, when this guy got voted in, I'm not saying Harper should have got another term. Liberal Trudeau won because he's pushing weed, and we did need a change. And the only person that could beat him was Trudeau. But I'll say that point in time in Canada, I was way wealthier. I wasn't worried about politics because you got to put a lot of faith in these people to get to the positions that they get to. And in the meanwhile, like I said, he silently ruined Canada the first 4 years, and then he doesn't even try and hide it the last 4. Like scandal after scandal after scandal. They know the loopholes, that they can play and get away with. Everything gets pushed to committee, right? And like, where's the buck stop? Well, that's where it stops now. You're not letting it go to committee.
In committee, yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm just going to invite dime bags. Come on. You should be able to go on your Facebook and just click, and then you should pop in here if you're up for it, man. That's all.
Well, I don't really watch like I got like a basic TV package for the old lady, and I got NHL Center Ice kind of thing, right? So the only thing I really watch on like actual TV is hockey games, and I'll watch CPAC, right? So I read, I think yesterday or something that, like the CBC, CTV revenue, whichever it was, is down only 240 grand for ads in the last year. And then instead of showing ads now for commercials, they'll just show a timer, like timing down from 3 minutes.
Yeah, because they don't have airtime for that.
Yeah. So like today, for instance, right? Or there's nothing going on in Parliament, right? So CPAC's just a bunch of fucking morons on some bullshit we don't care about. It's some whatever fucking meeting somewhere anyway. So like I just start looking around on the TV, and so I flipped to Three's Company, and that absolutely, like when it comes to commercial, there is no commercial. It just plays 70s music and like has just gay elevator music for 3 minutes, and then it turns the channel back on, right? So it goes to show, I guess, that nobody, like the amount of people that aren't watching, regular TV anymore. I guess that'd be my point.
They're all on alternative media somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. They did it to themselves.
Oh yeah, they totally did. I agree with you. I just I don't know, man. This reminds me, I suppose, like it's provincial BC election, right? October 19th, I think, this coming Saturday, whatever it is, that's the last day or the actual election. And I'd encourage everyone to get out and vote because, man, we got to show this country how it's done. We'll just eject this NDP woke fucking bullshit. Like the wave coming, man.
Conservatives are still edging out Evie.
Well, can you believe any of the polls? But I can tell you one thing: anybody that I ever run into hates the NDP.
Yeah.
This guy Evie's installed, 2 years ago when Horgan got throat cancer, and he was handed a province with $2 billion in the bank. And now we're like 16 billion in debt.
Yeah, makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Drug addicts everywhere, closed hospitals. Like it's a mess.
So, gentlemen, be prepared because I'd love to do something like this at the end of the shows. If you're not up for it any given day, just don't answer the call. If you are, this is what we'll do for a quick wrap up of the show. People like seeing her ugly mugs and makes them feel good about themselves.
Well, when they have, when they got breaks or whatever, they're off for a week, and we show this, stuff from last week and shit. I mean, it's somewhat tough to watch, because you got to listen to these idiots for another go around. Like,
yeah, you heard it once.
That HEDY fry, like, wow, man, and like yesterday's or whichever with Khalid, like, oh my god, that is tough to keep an audience.
Very painful.
Oh yeah.
There's been a lot of Khalid the last 10 days. They've been using her because I guess they think she's doing a good job, but
word salad. Yeah, I don't even know how long she talked for yesterday, saying something she could have said in 2 minutes. It was like half an hour.
Oh no, it's just a straight up filibuster by a dumb person, and. But today's committee, I don't think very many people saw that before, because maybe they saw a clip. No one saw the whole thing. I don't think. Did you guys?
No, I watched it.
Did you? Yeah. Well done.
you must spend an awful lot of time watching, because like I do, but it's my job. Like, so you must spend hours watching.
I do. I mean, I don't know. Maybe this week's like the week, and I not pay attention so much. There's nothing going on. Like I don't. See, I guess like I spent a lot of time, I guess, like looking on X and shit and seeing what the real deal is, you know.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. On this week, I found more challenging than the last week when they were off, like when they were just on a 1 week break, not for the summer break, but for the 1 week break that was back in April. I think they have a weekend around Easter.
Yeah.
I found it a lot easier then to source material, but I think it was because I was I wasn't watching as much stuff then. So the stuff I would see was newer, or at least new to me. So I'd sense like, oh, it's new. I've got a better sense of everything that's going on. I didn't know much about committees before, and now I
you're getting quite good at it.
Know most of the ins and outs.
I don't like, it's just going to go back, and I don't like the fact it'll go back and forth, and it's just going to be on repeat until Parliament's prorogued, or I'm pretty sure the Conservatives aren't going to cave and send it to committee, so it's just going to be the same thing every day. But I do like, they're getting like really like lose their shit unhinged, right?
No, so the Liberals, yeah.
So when that happens, I mean, it makes it totally worth watching.
I'm going to be very interested to see how it goes next week. I'm sure India will be the top of the news cycle still next week when Parliament comes back. It's going to be interesting to see how Poilievre navigates around the India BS and gets back to the important stuff, the money, the documents, the names. The big stuff. India's, again, a very little thing.
How pissed do you think India is right now?
What?
I said, how pissed do you think India is right now?
India was pissed.
He pissed off the whole nation.
like getting like called out on the world stage by fucking Captain Tampon. Right?
Yeah. Oh, not a good look.
No. I'll go you one further. I mean, like there'll probably be something else before next week starts. There'll be another like bomb drops. Right?
It wouldn't surprise me in the least. They are that desperate.
Are they fooling people
It's a sad show.
Like, because I don't even know if they're fooling some of the older folks. Because I do think, I'm hoping, my mom is catching on a little bit. Like, I'm just hoping that Canadians are seeing it for what it is and being like, oh, it's a distraction. It's a liberal tactic that they use all the time. Yeah. It is frustrating to watch a lot, yeah.
I would think it would be your, job to educate these people who can't or, don't get on to see what the news is, right? Like these old folk, like just getting their news from the CBC and the CTV.
Yeah. Again, I feel like what my job is not so much because I'm a commentator, I guess, so I commentate a bit, but it's more about showing the information. Let Canadians make up their own minds, because if they see it, they'll figure it out, because it's pretty clear to see that.
I mean, like in your own circles, I'm saying it is not your job. I guess that's not a good enough word. It is your duty to inform these people that don't get the actuals of what's happening. The ones that only get propaganda on the regular TV, like they should have us telling them. And I make sure I do. And look at by this channel, and I always dial my mom in or whatever, right? Like old people, she can't work the internet, She can turn on the CBC. And why wouldn't you believe them? Because I mean, that's been her entire life's worth of news.
We just had somebody make the comment. The comment was, "Goddamn, stay still." And now I've lost. Jesus Christ. The joke is along the lines of 3 white guys. I didn't think there was anyone left.
I tell you, these characters kill me. Sometimes I end up laughing so hard.
Thank you, Michael L. That is pretty funny, man. On that note, boys, we're going to go.
Alrighty.
Thank you all
It's
so
been
much.
fun.
I'm just going to go back to the show and say see you later to the gang.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Later.
So yeah, gang, we're going to try to do a little piece like that at the end just to wrap it up each day. We'll try to find some different people. It's hard to figure out on the fly, like how I'm just going to do that with different people. People need to be prepared. If I'm going to call, you're probably not getting a really long warning. Just get on there and we'll play. Anyhow, thank you all so much for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, share, get notified. We're learning about Canadian federal politics. We've got a pretty strong group here that's been hanging out for quite a while. You guys have picked up what's going on in our country, and all we can do is let other people that don't know. Tell them to watch it, because if they watch it, they'll see it. Most people will, for what it is. Not little clips out of context. You've got to watch it the kind of way we do, like where you don't see like 30 seconds of a 10-minute speech. You see the 10-minute speech, and then you can decide. That's it. I'd like to thank the moderators always for hanging out, coming on the show. Dime bags, we'll get you next time. We'll get you on here, Mike Tremblay. I did try calling, but like, if you're weren't on Facebook or expecting a call, it's easy enough to miss. That's it, gang. I'm Aaron. This is Canadian Looney. We're getting it here for today. We will go out on an extra. Why not? I do like the extras.
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here?
Oh, yeah. It's time for a change in this country, my friends. A real change.
Wiggle and squirm as you might, it is really hard to put lipstick on a pig.
When I'm Prime Minister, I will keep my promises.
WTF. Here.
I know this place is where I am. No other place is better than. No matter where I go, I am proud to be Canadian. I am, you know I am. The world that works
The one we call Canadian.
Gentlemen, beam me aboard.
Later, Patriots. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. We'll have a show to deliver, guaranteed. We'll find something interesting to watch tonight. Let's go. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, get notified for the live shows. Check out some of the other videos. That's it. We'll see you next time, guys. Thanks for watching.